So I have just finished what I believe to be my 21st stream session of Clair Obscur Expedition 33. It took 19 to finish the game, defeat the final boss, pick an ending, and all that. And then I thought was just going to take one session of post game stuff, but I found more stuff that I spent too much time in, or other stuff I just wanted to do, other tasks they gave me. So it ended up being two full sessions of post game. But I have now at this point, I think I've done everything I wanted to do, and I wanted to take some time to give this a little more treatment for a reflection, a retrospective, and like a full review, or giving my final thoughts than I normally do when I just post a review on Blue Sky, which I might still do, but I wanted to provide a little more information. This is a game that, despite despite all the gripes that I've had and all the complaints I've had in the act of actually fighting, this is a game that I associate the difficulty a lot to Elden Ring, in that regardless of like how difficult the game comes off at any point in time, or like at its worst, I feel like the game does give you the tools to succeed. For one thing, the Pictolumina system is absolutely phenomenal. Finding ways to not only bolster the stats of your team with those, but giving them potentially incredibly powerful or even broken abilities in some cases. Once you spend enough time with that Picto, it learns it, and you can unlock it and assign it to the rest of your party to share in the wealth, to make everyone equally broken. And the realization I came to regarding the difficulty of this game, because I've been bashing my head seemingly against a bunch of enemies that I'm probably just underleveled to face. But with the Pictolumina system, I feel like I've been punching above my weight consistently ever since really coming to terms and figuring out that system and optimizing it as best I can in any given moment. But like when bashing my head against enemies that like go three or four times in a row before I even have a turn, the realization is like if you optimize your systems, become as tanky as you can be, and also if you learn the mechanics of the combat, if you learn to dodge correctly, especially if you learn to parry correctly, the game is trying to apply as much pressure as possible to still make things difficult for those people. It's still trying to it's doing it that many times in the hopes of like, even if you do learn the pattern and you parry it like three times, maybe that fourth time you'll fuck up and they'll get the damage in. It's trying to account for that. It says on Expeditioner difficulty that dodges and parries are encouraged but not mandatory, and I feel like that's absolute bullshit. I don't think I would have gotten anywhere on this difficulty if I hadn't figured out dodges or parries. I think the story difficulty, absolutely correct on that. That's a normal RPG where you can just play it like a turn based RPG and just not do dodges or parries or jumps or anything on your turns, and you could still come out of it. But Expeditioner, I think I'm calling absolute bullshit on the. You don't need those mechanics. They're absolutely necessary at this difficulty. Maybe maybe like way way higher up in levels it's a different story, but I really doubt it. I really don't agree. And another thing I came to realize, is I finished this game when my characters were level 50. Like two of the characters in my final party were 50, and and one of the others was 49. And I believe playing my favorite game of all time, Kingdom Hearts 2, which I do not consider a difficult game by any means, nowhere compared to this at least, but I believe I finished that game around level 52 or so, 54 perhaps. So that put things in a really crazy perspective where like they're RPGs, both of them, so they're very comparable. So like by those standards, I finished this game like sooner than like what's the word I'm looking for? Sooner than like how built up I should be in Kingdom Hearts 2, which is a crazy thing to think about. But yeah, like basically I think the difficulty is fine, and much like Elden Ring, perhaps even more so than Elden Ring, it does hold itself to those standards of an RPG. And this is why RPGs do difficulty correctly. Because the difficulty in the game is always based around the level that you are at any given time. And so if the game is too difficult for you at any point, you just need to go gain more levels and come back. And any time I hit a roadblock in this game, I only had to go and get a mere handful of levels, like maybe 3, maybe 5 at the most, and then come back, and a hurdle was able to be crossed over. So it really wasn't bad of a grind or an XP farm or anything. It really wasn't. And I did enjoy a lot of the side tracks that I did, a lot of going and just exploring the map and things like that in those times where I had to farm for XP. I enjoyed that quite a bit, and these last 2 sessions of post game, dare I say, I've probably enjoyed the game the most at this time, where there isn't really anything hanging over my head anymore of like, oh, you need to finish this, oh, you got to beat this game before you lose Game Pass in a month and a half. All of that is gone, and so I've just been able to experience cool things, find cool things, build myself up even more. Even in the post game, like there was a boss that I came across that I struggled with 2 nights ago, the first session, and then I came back this session just a few levels later and maybe like a good picto or 2 later, and I was able to clobber them almost with ease. It was insane just how quickly you can transform. But the bottom line on that first point is this game definitely does give you the tools to succeed. As much as I've griped about the difficulty, I think the difficulty is really good. Just fine, even. And the combat itself is phenomenal. What, like, obviously, it goes without question that what this game excels at is the combat. Incorporating and, like, modernizing the turn-based combat so much, including so many great things from other games, dodge timing, parry timing. Jump dodges were my personal favorite, I'd say. They seem to be like the easiest to hit consistently, and then to get the counterattack out of it. Just the feedback on that. Like, I kind of wish everyone just had jump counters, and I would love that. That would be a cool like post game thing to add. Just like, because I've seen the place where you can tweak, you can limit your own damage or multiply enemies' health, which neither of those I felt the need to do at any point because I'm not built up that much. But I think it would be a really cool thing to alter what kinds of input the game demands from you at any given time, like some kind of post game cheat of like all jump dodges, or all dodge, all parry, all gradient, stuff like that would be kind of fun. I don't know how complex that would be to implement with all the different enemy types, or you'd have to give all the enemies like the same kind of move. I don't know the logistics of that, and I understand it's a comparatively small team to a lot of studios out there. But overall, the combat is great. The combat's great as it is. Narratively, this was a game where I was kind of there was a lull period. Like Act 1 was very enticing. There was a really great, really interesting world building and premise. You really wanted to know what happened. If for some reason you weren't in at the first Gamage cutscene, when they land on the island and the expeditioners get slaughtered practically, is like really hooks you. And from there, Act 1 was really interesting, finding the other survivors and everything, seeing where everyone was at. Act 2 is kind of where things took a weird direction, and narratively, I just really wasn't happy about where things were going. We got told a lot of things by Verso about like he's originally from Expedition Zero and Renoir's their commander and stuff like that, which now in retrospect we know were lies, obviously. But I was just like, no, I'm not satisfied with this, and if these don't get turned around later, I'm going to be very upset. Luckily they were, but like much of Act 2 was spent just going, not much is really happening narratively. Like we had like the basic game plan of what was right in front of us with like, okay, well we need to defeat the Axons to become more powerful to get to the Paintress. And the act of doing that was fine. Like I relatively liked the areas we were going to, like Visages or Visage and Cyrenae. Those areas were interesting enough, but just like narratively, it was just a period of waiting for things to happen. I feel like, and then of course Act Three happened, or like more accurately, the end of Act Two into Act Three, where those plot revelations came to light, where we learned that the Paintress was actually shielding more people from getting gommaged, and her power was waning. But it was really Renoir that was the problem. So now that we killed the Paintress, everybody's going to die. And then who Mael really is, and everything like that. Those were the revelations I wanted. Narratively, I liked everything that was revealed there. I just hated the act of it being in note form. Just Verso reading a note. I hated that so much. Like someone could have told us that, and that could have been a huge thing. But actually, like the surreal moment of defeating the Paintress and going back to Lumiere and getting to celebrate for a brief moment before tragedy struck all over again, or even on a more drastic scale, that obviously hit very hard. I don't know. I just feel like it could have been revealed so much better. But the revelations in it, like from there into Act 3, as Act 3 kept going, all of that was great. I do have appreciation for the endings and what they are. I do kind of understand that there's a conversation between the two of them, like which one is better. I do feel incredibly justified in choosing Verso's ending. If you haven't followed my playthrough and are just watching this at a later time when I edit it down, I do feel justified picking Verso's ending. I have watched both of them. I didn't replay the ending to pick Mael's, but I did go watch it, and I do feel like it almost feels like there's a little more work put into Mael's ending, because there's this whole scene about them going to the opera house, which is you only briefly go through at the end of the game. But there's like a whole gathering at the opera house, and like supposedly Lune and Verso have a kid. Gustav and Sophie are back there again. And just like everybody's there. It's a great moment. And then like Verso walks out on the stage and starts playing piano. And then they give you this massive jump scare on a close-up of Mael's face, and it's just like slathered in paint, like it's becoming corrupted, like she's spending too much time in there, and it's a big "oh, you fucked up" moment. And just it gives you chills. It gives you chills. But whereas like the Verso ending, it's kind of just when it cuts away to that final cutscene, it's kind of just the actual Dysandra family at a grave, and then it pans out, and like SKA and the other people in the painting are there, and they wave goodbye, and then they go mage away, and that's kind of all it is. It feels a little cheaper in comparison, but I mean, both are obviously very emotional, and I do feel like I chose the right one. Again, I do really like where things went narratively. It was just kind of feels like there was just it just feels like Act 2 was just kind of going through the motions and just waiting for something bigger to happen. You know what I mean? And with that in mind, help but feel I can't help but feel like Act 1 had a lot of the coolest, most interesting, and most fun areas out of the game. I've mentioned throughout my entire playthrough, and people who have followed it know this, that I absolutely love Flying Waters. I think visually, aesthetically, Flying Waters is the coolest thing in the whole game, and it's like the second area you go to after starting the expedition. And that kind of cheapens everything. It feels like they came a little too strong out of the gate and then didn't really have anything better than that. Um, but just like Act 1 as a whole, I really loved Flying Waters. I really loved Gestural Village. Those were so fun to just walk around in and explore. Just really like the vibe of those. And also, Flying Waters was where we got the manor for the first time, which I was also just so invested in. I made sure in this last post game session to complete the manor and unlock all the doors and get everything out of there, because I just really loved that. I loved the music and the overall vibe, the mystique of that. Whenever the combat got too frustrating, I just kind of hoped to just find a manor door instead, so I can continue that. So like it was a lovely little mystery in here. It wasn't all that small of a mystery, and it was fun how just like you can almost find them anywhere, because like some worlds, some areas had them in there, or just like the full map had some doors that you could just stumble upon too. And there were some just kind of hiding in plain sight. Like there was one in the Reacher, the area that I did toward the end, and I stared right at it, and it didn't register to me that it was a door. I'm still upset about that. I'm still upset about that, but just like, I don't know. When we got into Act 2, like the Forgotten Battlefield, Visages, and Serenade, I mean, those areas weren't bad. They were interesting in their own right. They had their own stuff going on. But I just don't think anything ever got to the height of Flying Waters for me, visually, aesthetically. I still think that was like the coolest and my favorite area to go through. I love the gimmick of Flying Waters as well. Like some of the enemies have had gimmicks where like the floating enemies that you had to do free aim shots on. They had like the water mines, and so you could shoot those and then they explode and hit the enemies next to them. I thought that was great. I had a lot of fun with that. And I loved gimmicks like that. You know me, anything that makes the combat easier or more engaging. I didn't mention free aim shots in the combat earlier, but just like there's so many levels to the combat, and there's a lot to appreciate in there. There definitely is. One thing I will say about Flying Waters, maybe not so much Gestural Village. That had some interesting stuff going on with fights, but Flying Waters, visually and aesthetically, was my favorite area. But for sure, later areas had better boss fights at the ends of them, because just Flying Waters was just too early game. So I do have a list of. I'm sure people will appreciate this. I have a list of my favorite bosses in the game. I have a list of about 4 that really stuck out to me. I don't think any of the ones that I've fought post game have overtaken these for me. So these have all been like during the progression of the actual game. There's a lot I didn't get to, like Simon. I didn't get to because I didn't do a whole lot of that tower. I did do Alicia at the end of the Reacher, and I thought that was okay, but I don't know. I don't know if I would put her over any of these for me personally. Probably the top boss for me is Dueliste from the Forgotten Battlefield. It was from like a really, probably my favorite session of this entire game, where I finally beat another boss I'm going to talk about. Renoir showed up, killed Gustav for the end of Act 1 into Act 2, where we got a lot of story revelations and things like that. Not, as I mentioned, not really the ones you were looking for, but a progression of sorts happened. And we had like our next objective of needing to find Axons and go into all that. And then we go into Forgotten Battlefield, where we learn about gradient parries and gradient attacks, I think. And that was there was just so much death there, so many dead expeditioners. And then we get to the end, and Dueliste is there, where we fall into the river of blood or like the cave with like the pool of blood at the bottom of it, and he's there. He was just a really cool boss fight, I think, where like, I don't think he phase 2'd, but like, or had like 2 different health bars, but Like halfway through, he takes out the second sword, and his moves evolve because of that. And just like the really cool cinematic finish that that boss fight has, and I believe that was the first like true boss with one of those, unless you count that Gustav and Renoir confrontation, which kind of does, where he does like a final overcharge that doesn't end up doing much. But I just that was the first moment of like, oh god damn, this game's really cool. Like finally reaching those levels of like Kingdom Hearts 2 end of the game boss fights. Where you know the one where the like the I think the final phase of Zemnis, where you're dodging all the laser shots, and then like Riku tosses you, use Keyblade for a second strike, and just god damn, it's peak. But just like the game was starting to get to those levels for me with that Duel East boss fight, and then after it we got to the shady tree where we buried Gustav, and that was of course an emotional moment, and just like overall that was a really good productive session, and I just really liked that. I mentioned Renoir briefly. I think my favorite Renoir fight was not the final one, but the one in the monolith. I think was pretty climactic. I think that's the one that has that really good theme that people like. And he summoned like the giant painted cat, or the painted lion, and that was pretty cool. Yeah, I just think that reached like not that the final fight wasn't climactic. I do like the implementation of like the Axons that we defeated before and things like that, and then Aline having to come in and fight the Axons while we fight. Like all of that made sense. I did like that, but I personally, to me, I think it was a bigger. I just kind of in retrospect, I do think I just liked the Monolith Renoir fight a little bit better. And then I did mention this one earlier, but like before Duel East, there was Lamp Master in Stonewave Cliffs. I was stuck on them for a while. I had to go do a couple sessions of like XP farming and stuff, and then come back to fight them, and which kind of sucks even more knowing that very important end of Act 1 into Act 2 stuff happens right after it. But they were the first real roadblock in the game for me. But in retrospect, I think it's a really cool gimmicky boss fight. I like there were a lot of lanterns strung about that area, and like just walking up to them, you go through that cave, and the lanterns strung about in there just kind of randomly illuminate leading up to the like I think the vibe they present to you is really good. I think it's like a well designed enemy and all that. And just important to me, an important milestone, important roadblock to overcome, with what comes right after it. And then the last one I have listed is the optional boss from Falling Leaves, the Scavenger, which was just kind of like they had a gimmick with the masks and like disappearing and reappearing in there, which I think was cool. Making use of the free aim shots. I think if you destroyed enough of the masks, and they would come back out, or if you destroyed the right one, they would pop back out. But I think that was just a moment of, oh my god, I'm doing it. I'm playing the game the way the devs wanted me to play the game, because I had figured out their moves. I was able to just parry their shit flawlessly toward the end of that fight. Was able to first try them and everything. It was like a lot of interesting build up to that boss for being an optional area as well, because there was the stuff with the boy, who I didn't realize at first, but like what we were supposed to glean from the ending with Verso was that any time that faceless boy showed up, it was Verso. And then like any time it's the fading man, it's Renoir and stuff like that. But like he was there and is like, go ask this lady why the paintings take so many people. And so there was the weird lady of sap down in the cave who wasn't aggressive, surprisingly. We just talked to them, and did just the weird implications of that, and like having to go back and forth and do that before the gate opened and we could go up to Scavenger. It was all very interesting. And then I think there are like corpses of like Scavenger looking creatures all over the map in places, which is very interesting implicate. But just I don't know, a lot of implications there, and just all for an optional boss. But that's the optional boss that stuck with me. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know about anyone else, but I'm confident about these four choices. These four really stuck with me. If I had to pick a favorite, it's probably Dual East. I think there's a stronger version of them somewhere that I did not get to, but and as you can see from where I am, I did mess around in this post game area a bit as well because it took me plenty long enough to finish the game that this was already out by the time I finished. And I did what I could in here. I did the side missions to open the door, but in terms of combat, like I'm in the 50s in level, and I'm optimized as I can be with Pictos and Luminas, but I'm just woefully unprepared for this area, and I don't appreciate the status effect where I do 1 damage if it's stacked. So I would be very annoyed with this area even if I was prepared. So I'm not going to take. I looked around in here as much as I would have liked to, and I'm just going to leave it at that and not devote any more time to things. I'm satisfied with what I've done. I did a lot of fun post game stuff. I did a good amount of side stuff, I think. Even though I was pretty, for a time, I was pretty transactional and end game focused for this, but the game had other plans, and when roadblocks hit, I had to improvise and go have fun exploring and come back. But as I've mentioned, I did have a lot of fun with the exploration and that. Another gripe that I have is kind of other things the game tries to do with kind of overstepping its bounds, because obviously the combat is really refined and is the shining achievement of this whole game. I don't think any more needs to be said about that. But there are times where the game tries to do other things, like looking around and shooting stuff, which always felt kind of weird. Like the recoil of this feels a little hollow, a little empty. Little things like there are platforming sections, and the platforming feels very not good. And this is only accentuated in side areas like the gestural beaches. Like every gestural beach seems to just kind of like pick a flaw that the game has with its design and try to implement it as an actual mechanic or a challenge to overcome. And it kind of leaves a bad taste in your mouth. So I didn't, and I messed with like 2 or 3 gestural beaches, but I didn't really feel a need to seek them out after that, because I understood the vibe was going to be, here's this thing that isn't all that polished, and we're going to make you do something with it. And I understand it's a small team, and this game is incredibly, massively, deeply ambitious for what a new small team can do. But just, I still, like, it's nothing damning about the game, but it's stuff. It's these kind of things that detract me from giving it a perfect score, just so you understand. But despite my gripes with those side things, despite my gripes with the combat and some really annoying enemies, and like anything else I've complained about, like some weird terrain is another thing. But the one thing that has absolutely never disappointed about this game is the music. Let it not be overstated. This is a goated soundtrack. Like, I don't think there's ever been any doubt about that. I don't think anyone is not taking the soundtrack for granted, or like I think everyone universally understands that it is good, and damn is it good. I really liked the music in I want to say like late in like the meadows area before Flying Waters. There's this like slow song that plays with vocals. It's really nice. I can't remember what it's called. I tried to find it in the music player because I thought I had gotten it, but I couldn't find it. There's Lost Voice, which is like the first Gommage cutscene, and then like Burying Gustav cutscene music, which is very good. A lot of the battle music has been really good, like Goblu from Flying Waters. It also has that going for it. Painted Family, which for some fucking reason is not on the soundtrack, but is the music that plays in the manor whenever you go in there, is probably my absolute favorite. It's so like low and vibey. I love it so much. I don't know why it's not on the soundtrack, but a lot of the music is so good. And in this post game area, I love all the music in here. The combat music in here is great. The music that plays by the baths over by all the gestrels is really nice. Um, I yeah, the music is like 15 out of 10, maybe more. If judging on music alone, it would be like a 10 or more score. But so gameplay wise, some things bring it down. Um, but yeah, make no mistake, Lorien Testard, you did a fantastic job, and I cannot wait to see what you do next. Whether it's games or maybe you do like movie score. I don't know. I'm looking forward to where you pop up next. And listening to that. It's time to give this game a score, and I have been thinking about it quite a bit. Um, for those who don't know, I use the standard like 10 point system, so everything's a number out of 10. Generally, while most people maybe don't feel this way because like mids have gone up to like sevens in this day and age, no one's really satisfied unless it's really good. But to me, I draw a hard line in the middle. So like a five or more is there's a reason to play this game. If it's under a five, it did more wrong than it did right, and you probably shouldn't play it. Is what I generally go across. Not that that's an issue with this game by any means. We're well past a five, so don't worry about that. Um, I think I think what I'm going to give this game, I think I'm comfortable with giving this a 9 out of 10. For reference of some things I've reviewed in the past, that is going to put it above the 8.5 that I gave Baldur's Gate 3, which is pretty big. Um, that's a game I definitely agreed with for Game of the Year. Whereas that's another thing I meant to add is like, does this deserve to be Game of the Year 2025? The short answer is I don't know, because this is like the only Game of the Year 2025 contender that I actually spent time with. And I haven't really tried the other ones. So I may get back to you on that in the future, but we'll see. But I definitely agreed with Baldur's Gate 3 being Game of the Year for like the choices that you can make in it and how important those choices were. How much they change things, but it's not. But it understandably, because of how much leeway there is in those choices, Baldur's Gate 3 is not the most polished game in the world by any means. And some of those cracks began to show. I would say overall, Clair Obscur is a little more polished overall than that, especially when it comes to the combat. Um, but a 9 would put it above the 8.5 I gave to Astral Chain. I believe God of War 1 I gave an 8.5 to. Um, and I gave an 8 to High on Life. Not that that's anywhere anywhere related to the same genre that this kind of game is, but just for reference there for some other games. What it does put under, obviously it puts it under um, some of some favorite games of all time for me. I did give Spider-Man Remastered on PS5 a perfect 10. I believe I gave Miles Morales a 9.5. I have not finished Spider-Man 2 yet, so I can't rate that one at this moment. Um, I gave Elden Ring like a 20 out of 10 because I think it's twice what a perfect game should be. So we're unfortunately not touching that. Um, And I think I did give God of War Ragnarok a 9.5. I have noted here. So I feel I feel a little wrong putting that a little lower, but I think that that's something I can say about God of War Ragnarok. The narrative of that really hooked me the entire time. I was always like, I have to keep playing this to see where things keep going. And I don't think there were as many roadblocks when it came to that. Whereas I in this game I talked about Act 2 just being like going through the motions and just not being satisfied with where that was. Where I always felt like something was happening in God of War Ragnarok. Even the side stuff where it's just like, I don't know, like Atreus is doing this mysterious stuff with Odin, or like when Kratos teamed up with Faye and we got all the character development and stuff. That just like there was always something happening in there. And then like in this game, it's like even when things were happening, we were hitting roadblocks and had to go do other things. Not that those other things weren't enjoyable, but I don't know. I just like Fire. As I'm saying this, Fire Dragon did mention stuff about the game dragging on, and I guess that could be the point of that. I'm sure God of War Ragnarok was a shorter game than this took me overall, and so that could be part of it. Although by RPG standards, I know there's much worse. Like I'm gonna look at this, and I've spent like maybe 70 hours on this file. Whereas Persona 5 Royal is like 110, or God help us if it's more than that. I don't like. It's a point where it's a deterrent to play the game, you know. But I feel like I've spent plenty of time in this. I could have done more side stuff and bolstered myself more, but I feel like I've spent plenty of time in here, and done pretty much everything I wanted to do. Maybe there's a boss that I came across here or there that I could have gone back and fought, but I think I've done enough, and I'm ready to say goodbye to this game. Another thing I wanted to mention is that I feel like there are people more ingrained in the culture and the history of turn-based combat, where this game seemed more like a revelation to them than it did to me. It's like, sure, I've played turn-based RPGs before, but I just like, much like the first God of War game, everyone was like, "Oh, this is the greatest thing ever," and I just kind of tempered my expectations, and I'm like, not quite, but it's still good. Is kind of where I've came across with it. But just like I've complimented the combat as much as I could, as much as I've had complaints with it. I understand why the systems are there and how good they are for what you can do. I've given it all the compliments I can. I don't quite think it's perfect. I don't think it deserves a 10 out of 10. I'm comfortable giving it a 9. Some people may think that's not enough. Other people might think it's too much. That's where I'm comfortable putting it. I think it does a lot right. A problem that we're going to start seeing, much like much like Souls games and Breath of the Wild before it, is we're going to start getting Clair Obscur likes in the future, and I'm probably not going to be fond of that trend at all. I think I've seen like it's either like a Chinese or a Korean studio is already making one. There's already footage of it out there. I don't know I don't remember what it's called. I just remember seeing it, and it's being described as like the first Clair Obscur like, and I'm rolling my eyes like, oh no, here we go again. I'm not sure we need that. It's gonna get old, I think. And I think maybe people are gonna start regretting calling this the revelation that it is and talking it up as much as it has when we start getting a bunch of like if like the Genshin Impact, like what Genshin Impact was to Breath of the Wild, if we get like a Clair Obscur like Genshin Impact in the future and shit like that starts happening, it's gonna be we're gonna be gritting our teeth at some point, and just there's gonna be like, say like 5-10 years from now, there's gonna be too many of them, and we're gonna go, enough is enough. I wish this didn't become a thing. I can see it happen. Hopefully I'm wrong, but I can see it happening. I can see a future, much like not that there aren't good Souls likes, or not that there aren't good Breath of the Wild likes out there, but just like I don't know, something becoming too influential, and then and then the market becomes overcome with it, and then the original thing isn't all that special anymore. I feel like that's partially why I fell out with the recent Zeldas like Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. Although my relationship with Souls-likes has been the opposite, where it took me a long time to gain appreciation for them. Elden Ring changed that for me, and now I've been trying to retroactively go back and find some that I like, and I've been doing that. I've found quite a few, but to say that that market isn't a little oversaturated would be a lie. I would say I'd say there's maybe a few too many. Some people may disagree with me, but like, just imagine like how many Souls likes there are if we get that many Clair Obscur likes, and is that something that you want in the future? Like, is it worth it? Essentially, it's just something to think about. But I have spent plenty of time with this game. I'm comfortable giving it a 9 out of 10. I think that's deserved. Does a lot right. Just could use a little more polish and stuff in some other areas. Could hold my attention a bit better in Act 2, although, I've talked enough about it, but it just, I don't know, I feel like during that time I was almost pitching, not better stuff, but like other interesting narratives as well around that time if you go back and watch it. I'm not going to waste your time with them right now, but I don't know, just like it could have gone into different directions at that point, and then the whole Expedition Zero explanation was just so unsatisfying that it was just it's just like you're starving for more information in the game, and they're like, here's a rice cake, the most unfilling thing, the most unsatisfying type of food you could possibly have. I'm sorry. I keep berating it, but just I don't think it deserves that drastic of deridement, but yeah, here we are in the post game area. I've done what I wanted to do. 19 sessions to actually get through the game, with 2 more sessions post game. It would have been hilarious if it took 33 sessions, but thankfully it didn't. That would have been so funny. But yeah, I made it. I'm glad I can cross it off the list. I've done enough with it. And time will tell if it deserved the game of the year award. I can see why people like it. Like, I gave it a high enough score that it's just like, sure, okay. I've given another game of the year that I agreed with a lesser score than this, so I mean, just put that in perspective. But yeah, this is my final moments with Clair Obscur Expedition 33. Unless something really weird happens and I feel like playing it over again later, or something, I don't know. It was kind of a slog to get through at first. Like I was, but that was when I was getting really frustrated with it. But now that in retrospect, now that it's all over and done with, I see it in a better light now. Just kind of like a, oh my god, I get it moment. I understand. Like I understand that all the gripes that I had were immature, and I just needed to take better advantage of the systems, learn the mechanics better. Because if you do that, the game is incredibly easy, and I get that. I get that's where the difficulty lies, and then aside from that, there's still the RPG, the standard RPG difficulty of just gain more levels, and that's helped me do everything. And I'm probably still underleveled for everything, especially for this area, but other things in general. And I've just been able to punch above my weight the whole time because I took advantage of the systems that were available to me. The tools allow me to succeed, and that's great. When you get a game that gives you all of those tools, and to the point where you feel like you can do anything, and you feel like you can overcome any obstacle that gets put in your way. aside from this post game area. But that's like that's part of why I gave Elden Ring such a high score. Like that's what gaming is all about, man. You want you may want a challenge, sure, but you also want to feel like the game wants you to accomplish that challenge. Do you know what I mean? Where it's like, here's what's difficult about this, but here's how you do it. And like putting those pieces together, I feel like is part of the magic of video games. I feel like that's where the magic lies. And that's a lot of what this game does right. That's a lot of what Elden Ring does perfectly. Um, and yeah, I've basically explained the same thing several times at this point, but and I'm padding time out. This is probably already going to be a much longer video than I feel like while I'm just rambling, while just standing in the same place and looking at this pretty environment. Hopefully that's enough for you, random YouTuber watching this video at a later time, to see what someone thinks about this game that came out almost a year ago. It took me that long to beat, but I it took me that long, but I'm finally done with it, and I'm glad that I stuck with it, because I don't there was a time where I didn't finish a whole lot of games like at all, and so I don't take it for granted every time I finish a game and I'm able to be in this position. Especially as a streamer, it's nice where like all of my experience is out there for you to watch if you want. So you can see all the struggles that I went through, the realizations I went through, when I have gripes with the game, and then when I absolutely enjoy the game. Um, and I can change my mind about it as things go along, as I've probably done in this review. You've probably watched a session or two and been like, wait a minute, that doesn't line up with that. But that's just where I'm at. Um, it's it's a nice cathartic position to be in. It's like it's done. I can wash my hands of the game entirely. Sure, I could spend a lot more time in it. There's so many bosses and random enemies and this area that I haven't finished. And I'm only like halfway through the trophies or achievements for the game. God knows what I have to do that. I think I'm very far away from those objectives, and I just feel like I'm not going to devote the time into them. But I've seen the narrative of the game. I get everything. I get it, and I feel like I don't need to get any more than what I've gotten. Does that make sense? um, but yeah, so as I said, these are my final moments of Expedition 33, and I'm happy that I was able to share them with you. And I hope you enjoy that as well. Again, most of them are removed from Twitch by now, but my entire playthrough is available on my YouTube account, Sajin's Gamertag, at SajinGT, if you prefer to find it that way. If you would like to re-experience the adventure from my perspective. I get very frustrated at times, but there are other times where I don't. I had a lot of fun at the Gestural Village, as I'm sure many people did. But yeah, and this post, like, even though I couldn't do the combat very much, this area is very fun to explore. Like, a lot of the gestural baths were very fun, the carousel. Like, I see the fun in it, and like the characters themselves were having a lot of fun seeing Oskio, and so it was very worth it to see all of that, and I'm glad I was able to see all of that. I could have beaten this game like months earlier, and then I would have had to come back when the post game update came out, but I got to experience it like all in the same go. Like there wasn't a gap between those things because I was taking way too long because deterrence came up every now and then, and there were weeks or even months where I didn't feel like attacking those hurdles consistently, and I'm a variety streamer, and unfortunately there are a lot of good games out there, way too many unfortunately for me to get to or even finish, but to just stick with one for an extended period of time is a bit too tough. So other things get in the way, unfortunately, but it's the important thing is that I came back, I saw it through, finished the main game, and had a couple of really expansive sessions. Like both of these sessions have been over 6 hours, when my normal stream time is about 4.5. So I've been devoting extra time to these to do everything I wanted to do, and find some other things to do within that. So I really believe that I spent plenty of time in here, and as I said, I definitely could do more, but I'm not going to. I'm going to call it here. I've done enough. I've done enough. I've done plenty to like the game, maybe even love it. It gets easier and easier when the game is finally done and you have just post game to explore. I think maybe that's a factor as well. Just like if you're getting too frustrated, like whatever you do, finish the game, and then it's like a weight is lifted and you get to explore the post game. And I've had so much fun with the post game. Like the Reacher is probably like the highlight of my entire play. I don't know. It sure feels like that. Like sure there were more interesting areas than that, but I just felt incredibly accomplished doing the Reacher. It felt like a semi-reasonable challenge. The Alicia boss took a couple tries, but after that first try, I was like, I was really close. I can do this. I was decently prepared, and I did it all in one sitting, and I didn't have to come back to it, and that it felt really good. It felt really good to do that. And then the other roadblock that I found that past session, I went back to it this time and was able to do it. So but it's an RPG. If you come across a hurdle, you have a means to get stronger, come back, do it again. Sure, it's a narrative roadblock. It may prevent or like delay you from seeing things that you want to see, but you can go see other things, much like Elden Ring. There's a whole world out there to experience. You can go check out those things and then come back a little stronger, a little more experienced, with more optimized Pictos and Luminas. I cannot stress that enough. Optimize your Pictos and Luminas as much as you possibly can. And that'll do it for you. That's all I had to do. Just take a little walk around, gain a mere handful of levels, optimize Pictos and Luminas, and then tackle the challenge again. And it's amazing, the transformation, just how much easier it felt just doing that each time. Kind of crazy. As tonight with that snake boss was testament to. Another thing I'd like to mention with my score of a 9, I probably should have mentioned this earlier, but it is the same score that I gave to Assassin's Creed Origins, which is a game that I really, really love. I really, really do. But I also acknowledge is imperfect. Mostly because I was playing on the PS4 version, which is not 60 FPS like this was. This was optimized pretty well. I mean, we saw frame rate dips in places, but could be a lot worse. Could be a lot worse. Imagine trying to get dodge and parry timing in 30 FPS or worse. Like, imagine a Switch version of this where you just, oh god. Probably could do a Switch 2 release. That'd be kind of cool. That'd be kind of cool. I believe when I actually finished the game, like beat the final Renoir and did the Verso ending and everything, and looked at my save file, I believe my playtime was about 60 hours and 49 minutes. So shy of 61 hours. And so I've spent, like 2 sessions over 6 hours. So I've spent like 12 more hours in post-game. And so this will be my final playtime, unless something drastic happens. But 72 hours, 14 minutes, 49 seconds. My final playtime, I will take a screenshot of that. That is how much time I've devoted to this game. And I feel like that is plenty. Most games do not get that much, or anywhere close. And that's the time of recording this as well, if you needed to see that, March 7th. Well, it was March 6th, and then, oh god, it's 1:17 a.m. Oh, fuck. Oh, I didn't notice that. Like what you're seeing. It's probably just my regulars watching at this point, but I do have my Ko-fi account, Sajin GT. Also have a Throne account, Sajin's Gamertag, if you want to send me gifts. If you can't afford to donate, just spread the word. Tell your friends, hey, I found a cool streamer. He's a dog. Got a little Earthwalker with him. That's cool. Makes anime references. Is maybe a bit more profane than he should be at times. But just spread the word, because that's how the channel's going to grow a little bit more, and we'll get more revenue that way. It would be awesome to just... we're a ways off from it being sustainable, but anything to help the Twitch payments come in a little more frequently, you know? But I've made money from this, and I cannot thank people enough for making that happen, getting me to the point that I've gotten. I'm doing stuff that I would do anyway, so might as well do it on stream and try to make money off of it, you know? And with that mindset, I'll try to do it as long as I can. But we'll see how things go in the future. Thank you so much for hanging out with me on this journey, or watching at a later time, if you're less cool. But still, I'm still appreciative of that. And have a very good night, and I will see you next time.